Good morning, everybody. This is a video for COM540 Assessment 3, Challenges for Professional Communicators. Okay, looks like it's automatically animating for me. So the assessment items, I'm just going to go over what's required. You'll read it anyway, but I just think it's important to reiterate the main points. So this is the third assessment, which is due on the 11th of October. It's worth 30%. In the interim, you've got another one due, which is worth 40%. So this is the one in October, the 11th. Okay. So in this particular assessment, you're to write another 3,000-word paper on the challenges facing professional communicators today in an age of global and technological disruption. So there's a lot of transformation disruption going on. Select one of the topics from the subject, organisational culture, organisational change, or stakeholder engagement. So they're the first three modules. And then reflect on your learnings from the subject and what are the challenges that you consider would either enhance, change, or inhibit effective professional communication. So there's two parts to that. So Donald's provided you with two references, Shriver, who writes that the cognitive and relational networks that professional communicators build are directed towards purposes such as educating, persuading, clarifying, sharing, or collaborating. Do any of these elements contribute to your understanding of what are the purposes of professional communication? So you're going to be looking at what are these purposes, what's the role of professional communication, and you've already done this in the first assessment. Always like to put some pictures in, and of course I'm in the screen as well, so you can't see it that well, but that's fine. It's just a picture of someone connected. We're all connected in so many ways now. The other reference is Brumans, Curran, Robichaud and Taylor, who state that organisations are communicatively constituted. And I'm going to actually talk more about that in Module 4. Therefore, we need to understand what we mean by communication, especially the professional roles. You will need to source an appropriate theory. So you've been looking at theories all the way through. You've looked at theories for Assessment 1. You'll be doing that for Assessment 2. So there'll be ones that resonate, on which to base your reflection and justification and justified selection. And Donald's also said that contributions from the Montreal School of Week, I'd pronounce it Vake, will provide some background to your theory research in this area. So let's move on. So there's a number of references that Donald provided, and there weren't any links to these. So I've actually requested them from the library, and they've given me these interim links. So they'll give us, the proper links. I was hoping for it by today, but it hasn't quite come yet. And then there's the challenges that are also Hickey, which is a really good blog to actually look at as well. So the rationale for this is for you to be able to demonstrate advanced knowledge of the role of communication in organisational culture and organisational change. So be aware that you're, again, unpacking that role, and particularly in the context of culture as well as change. Okay? And demonstrate the cognitive skills to critically evaluate theories and contemporary communication practice concerning organisational culture. We'll talk a little bit more about that critical evaluation now in the marking criteria. Demonstrate ability to identify and critically evaluate stakeholder theory and practice. So stakeholder theory is the theory that underpins stakeholder engagement as well, corporate social responsibility, etc. And external pressures on organisations, and develop strategies intended to support and affect organisational change. So the marking criteria, so always look at the marking criteria because there are codes in here. So there's 4 criteria, look at those, make sure you work towards those when you're doing your assessment. So the first one is to actually to have an analysis, which is a critical analysis of the challenges facing contemporary professional communicators, the definition of terms, intent, summary and recommendations. So look through all of those criteria from very high level critical analysis, but all the way through we're looking for critical analysis. And that doesn't mean just analysis. That doesn't mean just writing and popping in quotes about what you see at the surface level. It's about you looking more deeply at the material that you're engaging with. And that's either the material from the actual subject readings. So if you do that, you can be assured of a credit. If you look more widely and really critical analyse things, if you read more widely, etc., you're more likely to go up to the distinction and high distinction. So that's looking at a more depth level. So that's actually looking at the nuances of different readings, different theories, comparing and contrasting. Okay? And it's a skill that will take a while if you're only new to academia. My advice always is to students is to actually look at some of the readings that you've got, the academic readings, look at the way they write and how they critique different parts of different literature, different theories. That's the key to how you can do it as well. The second criteria, demonstrated understanding and critical evaluation of either culture, change or stakeholder engagement. But underpinning all of this is culture as well. Okay? So again, it's very much about being able to explain, to synthesise the literature and the frameworks. Okay? And to identify the theoretical frameworks on which you're basing your insights, your assessment, etc. Then demonstrated understanding of the role of communication specialists in an age of globalisation and disruption, in technological disruption, etc. as well. So again, you have to actually look at the role of communication specialists. So some of you are communication specialists, and then others of you are wishing to get into that arena, or you use communication as a tool in your practice. Now, I'm just wondering whether we're getting a little bit cut off at the bottom here. I'll just see if I can. I don't think I can make it a little bit further down. A little bit. Sorry about that. So look again through that criteria, but you really have to do that. Now, a lot of people forgot to do that in assessment 1, so make sure you do it in this one. And then the adequacy of your review of the literature and your critical evaluation. So again, that's about how you go about that, the sources that you've got beyond the subject readings, the high level of academic sources, the scholarly sources, not just pulling stuff off the internet that isn't underpinned by research, and making sure that your APA referencing is accurate. Okay, so when I post up this particular video, I'll post up the PowerPoint to go with it. So the presentation, so always make sure that you follow the presentation guidelines. That's part of that last mark as well. Okay, very important, that last criteria, very important that you do this, because this is a skill that will more and more you'll get to know how to do it, and you'll actually start to use it in your practice. And that's what we're aiming towards with these assessments, for you to align this to your practice. So please present the paper in this format. First of all, your executive summary, which is always really important. And your executive summary is a summary of everything that you've written about, the key themes, the key arguments, and then recommendations. Okay? Table of contents. If you don't know how to generate a table of contents, there's a lot of resources in Word to actually show how to do that. But I do recommend that you automatically generate a table of contents and update that table of contents instead of manually doing it. Why I say that is because when other people are reading your reports, they can click on the table of contents, they can click on the page number and go straight to that. It's much easier, it's much more professional. An introduction that gives the context, an overview of where this is going, where this paper's going, a bit of a background, etc. The main body with section headings. Now you can follow section headings as per the tasks, or you can be innovative in displaying section headings. Be aware when you do section headings that they're not too long, that you don't use abbreviations in those headings, and that they really do reflect what you're actually going to be writing about, okay? And then a conclusion, which will conclude everything that you've said. It's different from an executive summary because it just concludes your main arguments. Normally, in a conclusion, you don't put more information, and you don't have to put any references to the literature, okay? And in a conclusion, you might give a bit of an overview of the recommendations, but the executive summary is really the space for the recommendations. And then your reference list in the APA Style 6. Make sure that you follow that. The other thing I want to see you doing is to avoid abbreviations, okay, like don't, can't, etc. Add instead of advertisement, just little things like that, okay. If you do things like, for instance, we've got APA there, actually put in full what you actually mean, okay. So first of all, if you've got an abbreviation, actually do the whole thing in full, like CSR, corporate social responsibility. So in the first instance, when you mention that, you say corporate social responsibility, and then you put in brackets CSR. And then from there on, when you talk about corporate social responsibility, you only have to put the abbreviation. Similarly with when you do referencing, when you first cite a group of authors, if there's 2 or more authors, you actually put all of those author names. Okay, so it might be Smith, Brown, Black, and Red. You do the full, each of those names, first instance. Thereafter, it's Smith et al. E-T space A-L, lowercase. Okay? That's just a little tip. What are the key elements of this assessment? Now, I like to go over this to reinforce what we've actually covered and for you to actually start seeding your thinking about what you've got to do. So what area of the literature research is going to be your focus? Is it going to be mostly culture? Is it going to be change? Is it going to be stakeholder engagement? What's most relevant to your own practice? So this is about you doing stuff that you can use in your practice, not doing something that's you're never going to use, okay? So it'll be organisational culture, organisational change, or stakeholder engagement. What does it mean to be in an age of globalisation and technical disruption? How has this changed the landscape of professional communication practice? So what you need to be looking at is, and talking about the background, you need to set your essay up to not just launch straight in so the marker or the reader knows exactly what you're writing about. You actually have to give some context. So give some context about what globalisation and technical disruption means, and then what it means to professional communication practice. Then you can segue into the challenges that are facing as a result of that. So what are the challenges that you consider would either enhance change or inhibit effective professional communication? And what are the key processes and roles of professional communication? So I'll also be doing and posting up a video later today on Module 4, which will give you a little bit of an overview of the literature that's in the subject on the challenges. Out of those challenges, you can identify some of the things that are required, some of the processes, some of the roles for professional communication to actually be able to overcome those challenges, to work within those challenges, consider those challenges. What communication theory or theories underpin your reflection and analysis? So what theories are you going to use? So don't just write stuff about a professional communicator and about the different skill sets and the challenges. You actually have to use communication theory, okay? And there's quite a number of theories that have been unpacked in this subject. And if you've done other subjects on communication and learnt about communication theory, you can bring those in as well, okay? Note, you will be reviewing the literature on one of the specific topic areas and will be reflecting on and writing about the challenges that face this area of professional corporate communication. It is an expectation that you will research more widely than the subject readings and references supplied for this assessment. Okay? So Donald's provided 3 references and there's also subject readings. So make sure you read more widely and bring in